What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for MLB Wednesday, July 21st.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon.
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to go over my top DFS picks for today's MLB slate.
And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Okay guys, we have an 8-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the pitcher position. I like Lance McCullers Jr. with a 3% pitching advantage over a low-salary batting team, the Cleveland Indians. Lance McCullers Jr. is giving up a .668 OPS versus righties, and he's facing 5 righties tonight. Now, the Indians have only hit 6 of his last 28 pitches. Now, that's not a big sample size, but it is only a .214 batting average, and Lance McCullers Jr. is $10,200 FanDuel salary. He's 100 less on DraftKings, projected at 26.9 fantasy points here tonight. His ERA is 2.8. His record is 7-2 on the season, pitching an average of 97 pitches per game, averaging 37 fantasy points per game, and he's been on fire, scoring 58, 43, and 40 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Lance McCullers Jr. here versus the Cleveland Indians. I also like Kyle Hendricks with a 2% pitching advantage over the St. Louis Cardinals. I like this pick because Kyle Hendricks is only giving up a .699 OPS versus righties, and he's facing 7 righties, and he pitches his best ball versus switch hitters, only giving up a .645 OPS versus switch hitters, and he's facing 2 switch hitters. So he's not facing any lefties here tonight, which is his worst pitch. So he's got good splits, and he's also got good pitcher versus batter history. The Cardinals have only hit 51 of his last 221 pitches. That's a .231 batting average with a huge sample size. So Kyle Hendricks is $9,900 FanDuel salary and $800 less on DraftKings. Projected at 21.4 fantasy points here tonight. He has an ERA of 3.65. His record is 12-4 on the season, pitching an average of 87 pitches per game. He's averaging 30 fantasy points per game on the season, and he scored 37, 26, and 34 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Kyle Hendricks here versus the St. Louis Cardinals. Okay, let's take a look at the catcher first base position. I like Gary Sanchez with a 40% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Matt Moore. Gary Sanchez is batting 7% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .747 OPS versus lefties. And Matt Moore, he throws his worst ball versus righty batters, 33% worse than his pitch to lefties, giving up a .977 OPS versus righties. Now there's no at-bats versus Moore yet, and Gary Sanchez is $3,100 FanDuel salary. He's $1,400 more on DraftKings, projected at 13.5 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 25, 3, and 22 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Gary Sanchez here versus Matt Moore. I also like Buster Posey with a 21% batting advantage over Julio Urias. Buster Posey is batting 14% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a 1.078 OPS versus lefties, and Julio Urias is giving up a .640 OPS versus righties. Now I like this pick because Buster Posey is 4 for 12, batting a .333 batting average and a .967 OPS versus Urias. He's $2,900 FanDuel salary and $1,400 more on DraftKings. He's projected at 9.2 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 12, 28, and 16 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Buster Posey here versus Julio Urias. Okay, let's take a look at the second base position. I like Gleyber Torres with a 34% batting advantage over that low salary pitcher, Matt Moore. Gleyber Torres is batting a .696 OPS versus lefties, and Matt Moore, we know, he pitches his worst ball versus righty batters, giving up a .977 OPS versus righties. Gleyber Torres is 0 for 1 versus Moore, but he's only $3,000 FanDuel salary, and he's only $400 more on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites, but it looks like an appealing DraftKings price, and he's projected at 13.7 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 6, 28, and 22 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Gleyber Torres here versus Matt Moore.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer, where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool, where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, let's take a look at the third base position. I like Wilmer Flores. Oh, this is a value play. So Wilmer Flores, he's got a 14% batting advantage over Julio Urias. Wilmer Flores, he bats 8% better versus lefty pitchers, batting a .837 OPS versus lefties, and Julio Urias is giving up a .640 OPS versus righties. Now I like this pick because Wilmer Flores is 4 for 10, batting .400 with a .855 OPS versus Urias, and he's only $2,500 FanDuel salary, and he's $1,500 more on DraftKings. Projected at 10.9 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 8 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 9, 19, and 3 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Wilmer Flores as a value play here versus Julio Urias. Okay, who do we have at the shortstop position? I like Tim Anderson. Now, he doesn't have a batting advantage here. The splits are not good, but there is something I like about this pick. Tim Anderson, he's batting a .755 OPS versus righties, and Michael Pineda, he does pitch his best ball versus righty batters, giving up a .590 OPS versus righties. But the reason that I like this pick is because Tim Anderson is 12 for 18. That's a .667 batting average and a 2 OPS versus Pineda. He has 3 doubles and 3 home runs out of those 12 hits. So half the time he's crushing the ball versus Michael Pineda. And he's only $3,700 FanDuel salary, and he's $1,600 more on DraftKings. So I think you're getting a discount on a stud here because the splits don't look good, but his batter versus pitcher matchup is fantastic. And he's projected at 11.1 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 12 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 3, 22, and 19 fantasy points in the last 3 games. And I also like this pick because Vegas thinks there's going to be 9.5 runs scored in this game. That's their over-under. So I like I like Tim Anderson here versus Michael Pineda. Okay, moving on to the outfield position. I like Kyle Tucker with a 26% batting advantage over a low salary pitcher, Eli Morgan. Kyle Tucker is batting 22% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .902 OPS versus righties. And Eli Morgan, he pitches his worst ball versus lefty batters, giving up a 1.071 OPS versus lefties. Now there's no at-bats versus Morgan yet, and Kyle Tucker is $3,500 FanDuel salary and $400 more on DraftKings. Projected at 10.1 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 35, 9, and 0 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Kyle Tucker here versus Eli Morgan. I also like Michael Brantley with a 34% batting advantage over that same low salary pitcher, Eli Morgan. Michael Brantley is batting 31% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .950 OPS versus righties. And Eli Morgan throws his worst ball versus lefty batters, giving up a 1.071 OPS versus lefties. There's no at-bats versus Morgan yet, and Michael Brantley is $3,200 FanDuel salary, and he's only $200 more on DraftKings. So I like that price on both sites, and he's projected at 10.8 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 11 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 25, 12, and 0 fantasy points in his last 3 games. So I like Michael Brantley here versus Eli Morgan. And another guy I like is Akil Baddoo with a 42% batting advantage over Jordan Lyles. Akil Baddoo, he's batting 57% better versus righty pitchers, batting a .927 OPS versus righties. And Jordan Lyles, he's giving up a .778 OPS versus lefties. There's no at-bats versus Lyles yet, and Akil Baddoo is only $3,100 FanDuel salary. He's $200 more on DraftKings, projected at 10.6 fantasy points here tonight, averaging 10 fantasy points per game on the season. He scored 0, 42, and 15 fantasy points in the last 3 games. So I like Akil Baddoo here versus Jordan Lyles.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again and good luck.